There is a huge political furor raging over the arrest of climate activist Disha Ravi. For perspective across the political divide, I want to introduce first from the ruling Bharatiya Janata Party, its spokesperson Dr. Sambit Patra, squaring off against Dr. Patra. From the Congress, we have Supriya Shrinit. And for a third party perspective, I have Ashutosh. I want to go across first to Dr. Patra to lay out why you believe that the opposition's attacks are unwarranted. Why is it that you are convinced that the government is on firm footing? Why is it that you believe that this activist arrest on charges of sedition does not show the government in bad light and is actually being done as per proper process and law? Sambit Patra, let's start.
See, Rahul, first and foremost, as far as the furor concerned with Disha's arrest is concerned, I have a sense of deja vu. It's not for the first time that the opposition is crying foul. Remember, since 2014, we have umpteen number of such chances. Sarjil Imam, be it Umar Khalid, be it the case of Farooq Munawar, be it the case of, say, Varavara Rao, be it the case of Sarfura Jargar. In all these cases, the opposition and some of the so-called quote-unquote liberals found some pretext or other to oppose the arrest of these so-called activists. In fact, in Sarfura Jargar's case, they said she is pregnant, she should not be arrested. In Varavara Rao case, I mean, though he is behind the bar, the opposition said that he's a senior citizen. So despite all these furor, these people are behind bar, or the cases are still going on only because of the fact that there is merit in the case. So number one issue is there has to be merit in the case. And remember, when the arrest warrants were issued against Disha, or when Disha was sent to judicial custody, it was not by the warrants issued by the Bharatiya Janata Party court, not by the Bharatiya Janata Party office, but by the respected courts of this country, including the Metropolitan Magistrate. So the Metropolitan Magistrate has gone into the merits of the case and only thereafter pronounced that, well, yes, she be sent into 5 days, 10 days, whatever, judicial custody, number one. Number two, well, yes, I heard the press conference of the Delhi police. Delhi police is a uniformed police. I have complete faith on its credibility. They are a long-serving force and they produce certain evidences. Well, yes, these are under investigations. So why should I jump the gun before the investigation is concluded, before the courts have spoken? So I, as a mature citizen of this country, would wait my turn before I take on the government.
Dr. Patra says, don't jump the gun and assume the worst. Let the investigators prove their evidence or to show their evidence in a court of law. You know, whether somebody is a senior citizen or a 22-year-old activist, the age is irrespective. What matters is whether they've committed a crime, whether the police in a court of law can prove that that crime was committed with the help of the person they're accusing. That's all that matters. Don't jump the gun just yet. Supriya Shrinat.
Fair point indeed. We are not jumping the gun. We are only exposing the pattern that the BJP government has resorted to. Anybody who asks them tough questions, criticizes them, questions their policies, are faced with charges under the UAPA, sedition, and all kinds of, charges like that. I will produce an evidence before you, a data before you, and this is not data from us. This is data from their state home minister in the parliament. And he did say that 5,922 people were charged with sedition, were charged under the UAPA, and only 132 people against whom they could produce evidence. The rest of them, 98.2%, they could produce no evidence at all. So that goes on to say whether these are journalists who are exposing the salt and roti scam in Mirzapur, or somebody who's exposing how during COVID a minor girl is being made to mop the floors, somebody exposing how a village in Uttar Pradesh, in Varanasi, the Musahars are forced to eat, grass. They will all face sedition charges, and that is exactly what is happening here. We are not jumping the gun, because the same Delhi police arrested 5,922 people, but could not, and I'm repeating it again, could not produce evidence against 98.2% of those people. What does this go on to say?
Okay, Dr. Patra.
I also want to say, let us not dilute sedition.
Okay, Dr. Patra.
One point I want to say.
I'll come back to you.
Supriya. Let us not dilute sedition.
Okay,
Let us not dilute.
Okay, you're making the point that it's not about the probe, it's not about whether the police is entitled to investigate the case, Dr. Patra. It's about the kind of charges that have been leveled. Sedition is no ordinary charge. Supreme Court judgment after judgment says
to say that they want to break up India is not anti-national. Supreme Court judgments say that if you pick up arms and attempt to dismember the state, that is an anti-national activity. Therefore, the yardstick by which you determine in a court of law whether or not an act is seditious is a very high bar, that you're lowering the bar, that this is an attempt actually to muzzle dissent and silence those your government doesn't like. Dr. Patra, respond to Supriya.
See, 2 points that was put by the Congress spokesperson over here, that anybody who tries to in fact speak against the government is put under sedition and UAPA. Let me tell you, there is no sedition, there's no sedition act against Rahul Gandhi, Priyanka Gandhi, Robert Vadra, and most of the Congress spokesperson who day in and day out have been criticizing the government. So this allegation is completely unfounded. Number two, as far as the highest statistics of a single day arrest under sedition is concerned, that was in 2012 in Kudankulam case, where in fact the Congress party had launched an FIR against 55,000 people. 23,000 people were arrested on a single day. 9,000 people under the law of sedition by the Congress government, if you would remember the Kudankulam case. Dr. Manmohan Singh was the Prime Minister then. Thirdly, and very importantly, well, yes, let's not be the judges over here, whether this case is a befitting case for sedition or not, whether in fact Disha Ravi should be trialed or not. That is for the court to decide, and in fact the Metropolitan Court is also a court. The Metropolitan Court, after delving into the merits of the case, and what are the merits of the case? Number one, she was in a Zoom meeting with some people, in fact like Mo Dhaliwal, like Bhinder, etc., who are known Khalistanis. In fact, the whole toolkit was produced and in fact programmed and circulated by a group called as Poetic Justice Foundation.
Pause that thought for a moment, Sambit Patra, and I want to go across. I'm coming back to you. I'm coming back to you, Dr. Patra, in just a moment. No, 1 second, Supriya. Allow me to be fair. You've had a chance. I want to go across to Ashutosh, because when Sambit Patra says Mo Dhaliwal, it almost sounds as if he's referring to Jarnail Singh Bhindrawala, because before this happened, I, who come from Punjab, didn't really know who Mo Dhaliwal was, and therefore, if this activist was in touch with Mo Dhaliwal, who's not proscribed under any Indian law, is not a declared terrorist or even a declared Khalistani by the government, how does Disha Ravi know that she's talking to a terrorist? Or she's talking to a Khalistani or someone who is wanted by law? If she's talking to someone she doesn't know is wanted or could be wanted in the future, is that a crime, and can that be proven in a court of law? Ashutosh, opening comments.
See, Rahul, I think this is for the first time I'm witnessing that the major newspapers of the country, they had come out with an editorial. And I'll show you the Hindustan Times saying Disha Ravi's arrest is wrong. Then there is a Times of India editorial which says no witch hunt. There's an Indian Express editorial which clearly says that this toolkit is just a matter of paranoia of the government, not something else. So, and you go to other newspapers, so very clearly it said that newspapers of this country, they are almost in agreement that Disha Ravi's his arrest is a kind of a witch hunt which has been done. And this is very clearly written by the Times of India. So what is happening over here? I think this is an attempt to divert attention from the farmers' agitation, to create a narrative, and within that narrative, if they could restrict the sympathies which this farmer movement is getting. Otherwise, it is just not possible, because the government is talking about Mo Dhaliwal. So my dear friend Samit Patra has just mentioned, and you are also mentioned. But here is the case. Here is the case of Balwant Singh Rajwana. Since 25th March 2012, there is a mercy petition. And the last month also, the Modi government has not decided about the Rajawana's mercy petition. Now the issue is, who is this Rajwana? Rajwana was implicated and he was killed. He was convicted in a killing of Bayan Singh. The government is not prompt enough to decide about the mercy petition, to decide about his death sentence and all that. But it is more alert, more finding it more immediate to talk about Singh Mo Dhaliwal. In Dhaliwal, I think the government has been trying to raise, the BJP has trying to raise a bogey about Mo Dhaliwal for the last 6 months. But has there been one single FIR in this country against Mo Dhaliwal? Has the government of India contacted the Canada government? Has been discussed with the Prime Minister, with Trudeau, informally or formally? No. So what does it mean? It means Rajwana, who is a convicted terrorist, who has been convicted for capital punishment. Government is sitting on the file for the last 7 years.
Okay, let Sambit Patra respond to the point that Ashutosh makes, that Mo Dhaliwal...
Can I please come in?
1 second, Supriya, please.
Can I please come in?
Supriya, I promise you I will come back to you, but there is 2 against 1, therefore Sambit must get a little extra leeway. Mo Dhaliwal is not Jarnail Singh Bhindrawala. I don't know, and I hope that you'll be true when you answer this question. Did you know of Mo Dhaliwal before his name came up in this controversy? Chances are, if you're being honest, you'll say no, because he's not Jarnail Singh Bhindrawala. There's no case against him. And therefore, if this climate activist was talking to him, how does that establish a crime? How does that establish that this is sedition? How does that establish that this is a conspiracy to break up India? Sambit Patra.
Two things. First and foremost, I did not know who Burhan Wani was also, till he did what he did.
And
only then I came to know who Burhan Wani was.
There's a big difference. One second. Anybody who knew... No, one second, sir. I was in... One second. There's a big difference. No, sir. There's a big difference. Burhan Wani was a commander of a terrorist organization.
Okay, no issues.
There's a big difference. You cannot say you didn't know who Burhan Wani was, because anybody who knows anything about terrorism in Kashmir knew who Burhan Wani was. He commanded the Lashkar over there. He was the leader of the terrorist organization.
He did what he did was... And just a second,
Rahul. He was a very notorious, very well-known terrorist.
Rahul, I have heard you. I have heard you, Rahul. Rahul, my submission is, as the national spokesperson of Bharatiya Janata Party, unlike Ashutosh ji or the Congress spokesperson, I would not defend Mo Dhaliwal. For me, Mo Dhaliwal is an anti-national agent, come what may. I don't want to give any kind of defense as to why I feel Mo Dhaliwal is anti-national, because I've heard his speeches, I've heard him speak. These are viral videos across the country as to why Mo Dhaliwal is anti-national. Let the Congress defend Mo Dhaliwal. I have no grudges against the Congress or Mr. Ashutosh. If he wants to be the lawyer for Mo Dhaliwal, he can be. But in fact, Delhi Police's press conference also mentions about Peter Fedrich. Peter Fedrich was in fact the fountainhead of this toolkit. Peter Fedrich was banned and in fact was leveled as a terrorist in fact in 2006 when the UPA was in power. Peter Fedrich was in contact with Bhinderwal, etc. Bhinder and Iqbal Chaudhry, etc. So in fact we have to hear as to what the Delhi police said, that all this was fountain-headed by Peter Fedrich of Malaysia. So naturally, if you did not know Mo Dhaliwal, just because someone does not know Peter Fedrich does not make Disha Ravi less culpable.
Okay,
my knowledge or your knowledge does not matter.
No. Can I spend a moment trying to explain to our viewers who Mo Dhaliwal is? He's a suspected Khalistani separatist based in Canada. He's in focus now for holding Zoom calls with Disha Ravi and other accused activists. He's the founder of the Poetic Justice Foundation, has been accused of having a shadowy financial record. He has very clear political links. Dhaliwal has very shrewdly exploited Canada's liberal policies to run a separatist movement. This report dissects Dhaliwal's cryptic world.
Young climate activists.
Because if we fail to do so,
it seems as if center stage of the farmer protest has been snatched away from the farmers themselves. The Delhi police has blamed Canada-based pro-Khalistani organization Poetic Justice Foundation and its founder Mo Dhaliwal of running a coordinated disinformation operation using the farmers' protests.
A woman named Puneet, who is based in Canada, connected these people to the pro-Khalistani Poetic Justice Foundation and through them created the toolkit Google document titled Global Farmer Strike and Global Day of Action 26th January.
But who is Mo Dhaliwal?
My name is Mo Dhaliwal.
A Canadian-born, left-liberal corporate brand strategist by day, but a cunning political strategist and forceful separatist Khalistan supporter by night.
This battle begins with the repeal of the farm bills. It does not end there. If anybody tells you that this battle is going to end with the repeal of the farm bills, that is because they're trying to drain energy from this movement. They're trying to tell you that you are separate from Punjab and that you are separate from the Khalistan movement. You are not.
Twisting a heterogeneous farmer movement in India into an ethnic separatist movement as per his own convenience. The bigger question remains, has he been working alone? Corporate filings made before Canadian authorities suggest that Dhaliwal registered the controversial Poetic Justice Foundation under Canada's Federal Not-for-Profit Corporations Act on March 23, 2020. However, his main business, a Vancouver-based PR firm, Skyrocket Digital has been registered under Provincial British Columbia Registry, making it difficult to look into its financial records. Information available in the public domain suggests that Skyrocket has been more than just a corporate public relations firm. Not only has it been the strategist for Canada's New Democratic Party and its leader Jagmeet Singh, there's evidence to suggest a deeper association. Sample this. This individual is the head of engagement for Ontario's New Democratic Party, a provincial wing of Jagmeet Singh's NDP. But his LinkedIn profile suggests that he's also been working simultaneously for Dhaliwal's PR firm Skyrocket as a senior strategist for over 5 years. Back in 2015, Dhaliwal's Skyrocket announced a change in its business strategy, saying that the agency had found its calling and joining an NDP-linked political summit for the first time. The same year, its future client and Canadian politician Jagmeet Singh travelled all the way to San Francisco to participate in a Free Khalistan rally.
We all know what happened in 1984. We all know that this was a genocide. We already know that jo Hindustan de sarkar ne jaan bujh ke Sikhs nu khatam karna unna da maqsad siga sanu sab nu pata hai ehde vich koi shak nahi.
The Canadian government's own report highlighted the threat caused by Canada's pro-Khalistan elements. It identified the Babbar Khalsa International and the International Sikh Youth Federation as listed terrorist entities under the Criminal Code. But shackled by his own domestic political compulsions, the Canadian government is yet to adopt a decisive approach in differentiating between rightful protests and coordinated separatist movements, often sponsored by states. The Delhi police too has said that they intend to extend their probe to Canada.
प्रोसीजर के मुताबिक हमें पावर्स अवेलेबल है उनका इस्तेमाल किया जाएगा इनको इस केस में तफ्तीश ज्वाइन कराने के लिए.
As of now, the focus has been on artists and activists spreading Dhaliwal's message. However, the question remains whether the real masterminds behind this information operation and their sponsors will be investigated anytime soon. Bureau Report, India Today.
Now, that's a very comprehensive report which lays out the work that Mo Dhaliwal does, his connections with politicians who publicly have spoken in favor of the Khalistani movement and very clearly have interests which are very different from the interests of India's national interest. Now, there, Supriya Srinath, is the point that people like you need to reflect on, because that Mo Dhaliwal says that these farmer protests are just the start. Even if the bills are repealed, we will continue our protests because our real agenda is Khalistan. And the likes of Disha Ravi were in touch with characters like Mo Dhaliwal, and therefore Sambit Patra argues it's only legitimate to investigate how deep this connection runs.
Before I answer what I need to reflect upon, there was something said by the BJP spokesperson. He said sedition charges are not leveled against Rahul Gandhi and Priyanka Gandhi for criticizing the government. It gives you a sense of how they think, that even opposition in this country, it gives you a sense of how much they respect democracy and dissent and disagreement. The thought crosses his mind that sedition charges can well be leveled against India's opposition leaders for holding the government accountable. I want to first set that record straight. As far as Mo Dhaliwal is concerned, and I'm deeply concerned about some of what he has said, I hold no brief for him. In fact, I believe, why is the government and why has his organization, whatever Poetic Justice Foundation, whatever it is, has not been banned? What was the government waiting for? Why has the government not got in touch with Justin Trudeau for his extradition? Why is the government, if Greta Thunberg is indeed involved in this whole controversy, not gotten in touch with the Swedish authorities? I mean, these are questions that one needs to ponder over. Disha Ravi, according to this government, is a very small cog in the wheel. The bigger conspiracy against India is exploding somewhere else. Why are we not going after all these people?
Sambit Patra, if Mo Dhaliwal is the real culprit and the mastermind, what have you done so far to extradite him?
First and foremost, let me call out what the Congress spokesperson said, that I wanted to have sedition cases against Rahul and Priyanka. Of course not. I was just calling out her lies when she said that anyone and everyone who speak against Modi ji or this government have a sedition case slapped against them. I said, no, this is absolutely wrong. There is no sedition case against these leaders, despite the fact that since day one, they have been speaking against this government. So please get the record straight, number one. Number two, as far as extradition is concerned, well, we will do that whenever it's required. Don't you worry about that. But you were defending Mo Dhaliwal, you were retweeting Greta Thunberg, you were retweeting Rihanna, and today suddenly you want the extradition of Rihanna, Greta Thunberg and Mo Dhaliwal. I mean, astonishing. The Congress Party's greatest spokespersons, Randeep Surjewala, etc., were retweeting Rihanna. And today they want Rihanna to be complained about. I mean, this is an irony. The question is, if there are powers, well, yes, in Canada there are powers, an umpteen number of times this government has spoken to the Canadian authority. Remember, during the time Justin Trudeau visited India, Modi ji had raised the issue. Even Canadian authorities were rebuked when they took up the issue of the farmers' agitation in India. And well, yes, whatever is required for the sovereignty of this country would be done. But why to place your gun on the shoulders of Mo Dhaliwal and the likes and fire on the Indian government?
Do you not find some of Mo Dhaliwal's statements very disturbing? He's saying that no, Supriya, you can't. No, sorry, Supriya, you've been a TV anchor in the past, as is Ashutosh. If he starts doing the same thing that you're doing, we'll never have a conversation. You've had a say. You must wait your turn. Let Ashutosh speak. I will come back to you. I'm not being unfair. In fact, you're the one who's being unfair. Just hold your turn. I promise to come back to you. Ashutosh, a lot of what Mo Dhaliwal says, his agenda is disturbing. He's talking about how even if the bills are repealed, he'll continue because the real agenda is Khalistan. If Disha Ravi is in touch with people like that, if the agitation and these protests are being planned in concert, then surely that is something the police and the government must probe. Ashutosh.
See, Rahul, you are perfectly all right. Whatever Mo Dhaliwal is saying, it is disturbing. It is problematic. There is no doubt about it. Who is defending Mo Dhaliwal? Nobody is defending. My point is there is a lot of contradiction in what the government is trying to say or the narrative they want to build. If Mo Dhaliwal is doing such great things, according to Samit Patra, and I also believe, why the government has not acted upon for so long? This is the government which thinks that they are very, very protective about the national interests. They are fighting with all those anti-national elements. The issue is, where is that one complaint in any thana in this country? If there is no complaint, how can you ask Interpol to issue a red corner notice against him? How can you talk to the Canadian government for the extradition? If the government of India is so concerned about this man, these legal action has to be taken, but it has not been taken. What does it mean? Either the government doesn't take Mo Dhaliwal's statement seriously, or the government has another alternative narrative to discredit the farmers' movement, because all the time they're talking about it. I raised the issue of Rajavana. Rajavana, even the Supreme Court is nudging this Modi government, but the government is not acting upon that.
No, so here is a terrorist who's been sentenced by the court, and you haven't been able, Sambit Patra, to take a decision on whether he should be hanged or not. Earlier, because the Akalis didn't want it because you were in partnership with them. Now that the Akalis have split, you have absolutely no reason. And unlike Mo Dhaliwal, the character that Ashutosh is speaking about has actually been sentenced for a terror activity, and you haven't been able to take that decision.
No, even Captain Amrinder Singh is not in favor of what Ashutosh ji is saying. Let Captain Amrinder Singh first decide, number one. Let Arvind Kejriwal also speak about this.
No, why are you worried about that? He's convicted for terrorism. You have zero tolerance for terrorism. Do the right thing.
Why are you worried about Amrinder Singh and Kejriwal? No, the government will take the decision, but I don't want to compare a terrorist with Disha Ravi. Why should I compare Rajwana with Disha Ravi? Rajwana is a terrorist. Why should I compare him with Disha Ravi? Second issue is, well, in fact, Ashutosh was saying that he was not defending Mo Dhaliwal, and of course he should not be defending. But in the beginning itself, when you asked Ashutosh, he said that, well, yes, why should Disha Ravi be in fact put behind bars just because she supported Mo Dhaliwal? Who is Mo Dhaliwal? You don't even know Mo Dhaliwal. So that's not the issue. We all know, well, if Mo Dhaliwal is in cohorts with certain groups in India, then these people have to be questioned. And I answered Ashutosh's question that the government of India is serious about these issues, and that's the reason as to why the government had raised these issues with the government of Canada. And remember, it's not just Mo Dhaliwal. There are many people, even member of parliaments in Canada's parliament, like Jagmeet Singh, who is from the Dem party, who is a member of parliament, who sides with Khalistan. So it's a whole lot of cohort which exists in Canada who are pro-Khalistanis. Does that mean that the supporting agents in India should be allowed to go scot-free in the name of freedom of expression? Of course not. Mo Dhaliwal should be acted against, as well as the supporters in India.
Supriya wants to come in and make a point. I have a report on Peter Friedrich which I want to show our viewers, but I'm going to allow Supriya because she's got her hand up very persistently to make a very quick interjection.
And persistence does pay off, doesn't it? I just have 2 points to make. The reality is that everything that is happening right now is a boogeyman being created. It is a distraction from the real issue, and the real issue continues to be the farmers' protest. It is a message being sent out to activists, to young adults, to children, to their parents. Tell your wards never to raise their voice against the government, because if they will, this is where they will land up. It is the government of the day acting with high-handedness, distracting people away from the issues. जो farmer का issue है, उस पर बात नहीं करेंगे, बाकी सारी बातें करेंगे. It's a method to demonize the protesters.
Scare young children, you're trying to scare their parents, you're trying to tell them if they protest against the Modi government, they may end up behind bars, they'll have sedition against them. Respond to Supriya Srinath.
See, in fact, both Ashutosh and the Congress spokesperson said that we are trying to divert the attention from the real issue of the farmers' protest. My simple and humble submission over here is, Rahul, you must have called both these learned speakers only after informing them the topic of this discussion. That they both came for this discussion means that we are not diverting the topic, that they agreed for this discussion. If this would have been a diversion of topic, they would have easily and flatly refused. No, we would only talk about farmers' issue. We would not talk about Disha Ravi. This means that this is an important issue, and the opposition also wants to discuss about it, and that's the reason as to why they are discussing on it. And remember, sovereignty of India, integrity of India, and all those who raise voice against India, not against the government, of course, they need debate and discussion.
Okay. After Disha Ravi, Nikita Jacob, Shantanu and Modhaliwal, a new name has emerged in the Greta Thunberg Toolkit case. This is the name of Peter Friedrich, the self-styled author and activist with suspected links to the Pakistani ISI, is emerging as a key missing link in the Toolkit probe. The question is, who is Peter Friedrich?
Delhi police expanding probe into Republic Day violence. And now an even deeper and more sinister plot is surfacing. Apart from alleged links of activists like Disha, Nikita and Shantanu to Khalistani Modhaliwal, the Greta Toolkit may have links to a foreign activist identified as Peter Friedrich. As per Delhi police, the Greta Thunberg Toolkit mentions his name. Cops say Peter is part of an info war against India.
Peter Friedrich has been on the radars of Indian security establishment since late 2006, I'll say. Why the name of Peter Friedrich finds a place of relevance amongst those who are to be followed as resource persons is an answer which accused Disha or her colleagues will tell us. Whether it came from Mr. Modhaliwal or do they have a direct connection with Peter Friedrich or B.S. Bhinder. That is a part of investigation.
Peter Friedrich is said to have close ties to Khalistani separatist Iqbal Chaudhry, who in turn has links to terrorist Lal Singh of Pakistan's ISI. The Iqbal-Peter ties go back to 2006. A year later, Peter was made a member of Khalistani Front organizations to give him legitimacy. Friedrich describes himself as an author, activist, who speaks against authoritarian governments and policies and state-sponsored atrocities.
In 1984, the Indian government slaughtered thousands of Sikhs in the streets of Delhi. The killers included politicians, party leaders, political party leaders, and even the police. Yet, almost no one was ever held accountable.
Clearly, what started from celebrities tweeting in support of protesting farmers has now seemingly become a global hate India plot. Only a thorough probe can join all the dots and reveal the real picture. With Tanseem Haider, Bureau Report, India Today.
Yeah, so is it then imperative Ashutosh, that we allow the courts to do their job. You know, the government has leveled very sensational charges. There are disturbing videos, not about Disha Ravi so much in the public domain, as much as they are about the people that she was in touch with. Now, what is the extent of that connection? How deep are those ties? How much did she know about the Khalistani agenda? Should this not be probed so that we come to a determination of whether or not she actually knew? And maybe the answer is she didn't, or maybe she did. But we'll find out once the process has been completed. Ashutosh.
See, Rahul, unfortunately, for the last few years, the process has become more problematic and more painful than the real issue. On every TV channels and everywhere, you talk to any BJP leader, they will take the name of Umar Khalid, Sarjeel Imam, and all of them, and they demonize them. None of them has been convicted yet. The issue is, if they are not convicted, and the similar thing that the similar tactics they are using with the Disha, and they say, if you have a problem, go to the court, go to the court, go to the court. My point is very simple. My point is, don't demonize them. Wait for the court to pass a verdict. If they are convicted, kill them. Whatever punishment you want to give them. But don't make a process.
That's an important point, Sambit Patra. Ashutosh says, don't demonize them and convict them in the public court even before a court actually does this. The people that you named, you know, some of them in the end may emerge to be not guilty. What happens then? You are demonizing them in the court of Sambit Patra and his supporters. Dr. Patra.
Ask them, ask Ashutosh, in fact, did he not demonize Narendra Modi for all these years? He was never convicted. Did he not demonize Mr. Amit Shah for all these years? And recently also, he was called a murderer by some of these liberals. Was he convicted? Sadhvi Pragya was demonized, still continues to be demonized despite the fact that she is not convicted. The selectivism of some of the journalists, the selectivism of the so-called liberals is nauseating. You demonize the whole government, call them Hitler, dictator, what not and what all. You call Modi butcher, you call Modi murderer, you call Amit Shah all kind of name, despite the fact that no court in this country has convicted them. And you tell that we should not take the name of Sarjeel Imams, Burhan Wanis, Yaqub Memons. And astonishingly, these very liberals went to the court, the highest court of the country, Supreme Court, wanting the Supreme Court to free Yaqub Memon, despite the fact that Yaqub Memon had 3 layers of justice done on him, the lower court, the high court and the Supreme Court. Despite that, these people stood with Yaqub Memon. No one is demonizing Disha Ravi. In fact, the courts are following its rule. We are just debating and discussing. And remember,
Ashutosh
no one is calling Disha Ravi a terrorist.
Ashutosh, quick counter.
Again,
can I please come in?
My dear Sambit Patra did not take the name of Rajwana. He took the name of Yaqub Memon. That answers answer the question. Why Sambit Patra is not talking about Rajwana? Was he not a terrorist? Was he not convicted by the court? Why only Yaqub Memon? You go to debate after debate, debate after debate, debate after debate. BJP leaders will only talk about Yaqub Memon. They will not talk about Rajwana. Today they are talking about the Khalistanis.
You keep making this point, and people who don't follow they'll wonder, why is that the case? What are you accusing them of? Ashutosh?
You are asking me?
Yes. Why do you think he's not taking Rajwana's name? What's your charge? Be direct.
I'm simply saying they have a double standard. They pick and choose whom to be targeted, whom should not be targeted.
Okay.
In the Northeast Delhi riot investigation, the court has categorically said that when we ask the investigating officer, there is a one-sided investigation, nothing happened. Today, the Delhi police has lost all credibility. The 70 Naqab postmen who entered into the Delhi JNU, your channel has identified them. Till now, no arrest has been made. No arrest. Why it is so? There is no case against Anurag Thakur. There is no case against Kapil Mishra.
Okay.
Why so?
Supriya Srinath, final words. I'm running out of time. Quickly, please. Supriya.
My very short point, Rahul, is that we are running the risk of sedition and UAPA becoming the tada of our times. We are using it on such flimsy grounds. We are using it so recklessly that eventually these laws will hold no value. Every act of dissent is not sedition, and toolkits are mere resources. They are mere content. Mr. Modi also gave a toolkit on the 16th of February 2020 to the craftsmen. Refer to that. It's not a damn atom bomb. Don't make it sound so. The BJP almost does fear mongering on this. Let us use sedition and UAPA selectively before it becomes the Tada and the Pota.
So probe by all means, but don't be reckless in the charges that you level. Sedition is no ordinary charge. Don't turn it into a joke. Sambit Patra, final words.
See, national security, national integrity and sovereignty is no joke. There was a time, or rather I would say gone are the times, when Yasir Malik could sit with the Prime Minister of the country and hobnob with the Prime Minister of the country. This is a strong government. It will have strong responses, and anyone who is not seditious to this country need not worry. Well, yes, you have every right to criticize Mr. Modi. You have every right to criticize the government, but no. You cannot play with the sentiments of this country. You cannot fool with the sentiments of this country. You cannot sit with Khalistanis and terrorists and say that you are just an activist who is a climate activist. No, you cannot change the climate of this country and continue to be a climate activist.
Okay, I'm going to leave it there. You've heard from the BJP, you've heard from the Congress, you've heard from Ashutosh. And we leave it to our viewers to decide who they think had the more compelling argument.